When the knock came on the door, Wyoma thought it was surely too soon for Omaitem to have driven from Ike to Uyo. It seemed no time at all since he had said, "I'll be with you soon," and hung up the call before she could say another word. He'd gone to minister as a chorister at their main church branch in Ike for almost a week, and he'd missed Wyoma so much. He'd never been away from her for so long since they'd met. As a commissioner and a choir leader, Omaitem was a busy man. He traveled everywhere with Wyoma, and when he had time for his wife Dora and his daughter Jela, he'd only spend few hours with them. Now, Wyoma opened the door slowly and stared at the woman whose body size had filled the doorway, while her head nearly touched the beam across the top. She had an expensive thick curling bohemian hair, and her complexion was more tanned than she remembered. She had a huge zirconia choker necklace around her neck, and a bold expensive stud earring that glittered rainbow colors at night. In appearance, Dora was quite a huge woman with so much expensive accessories that spoke volume. She was rich, and beauty wasn't really the right word to describe Dora. She was tall and chubby. High cheekbones and a good structure meant that she was almost beautiful. When Wyoma realized who she was, her heart trembled. She'd seen her countless times at the church luncheon high table and on pages of newspapers. She'd seen her on Omaitem's phone. Dora was once on Omaitem's screensaver until he met Wyoma and began to have intimacy with her. He was his choir director, and she was just a week old in the Mountain of Life Ministries at Uyo when they'd started dating. She couldn't speak. Dora looked down at her for moments and then beyond her. "You're that bitch that has been sleeping with my husband." Dora pushed her aside and walked into the middle of her room, taking a quick snobbish glance. "Madam, please, what do you want here?" Wyoma asked quietly. "My husband and you are dating. I came to warn you, cheap whore, who hides and pretends under the chorister's robe and sleep with married men in church. Excuse me more," Wyoma stammered. "Shut up. You think I don't know that you and my husband Omaitem are going out and fornicating?" she asked sternly. Her eyes had turned mysteriously red. "Next time I see you near my husband, or my husband near you, I will report you to the general overseer, or to our branch pastor. Women like you shouldn't be seen in churches. You're nothing but a cheap slut, whose agenda is just to sleep with people's husbands. I know your type. You're a Rams girl," Dora said rudely and pushed her aside, walking away. As she slammed the door, Wyoma ran towards the door and managed to turn the key in the lock with a shaky hand. She settled on a chair, a chill like cold and heat had been creeping through her since Dora left. She wondered how Dora knew where she lived. She'd been dating Omaitem for just 2 months, and she'd not collected as much money as she'd wanted. He'd only paid her house rent for the year, bought her an iPhone 7, an allowance of 200,000 naira only. Wyoma was beautiful, elegant and attractive. She had the kind of body a man yearned for. Since her former man friend Chief Hezekiah died of balanitis, he was like her earthly god. And even when all her friends had forged lies against her to Chief, he'd loved her and spent more money on her. And to start life all over again, she'd relocated to Uyo, her hometown. Wyoma cleared the scanty burgundy hair that covered her scanty eyelashes in between sweats. She dialed Omaitem's number, and when it rang for a while, he picked the call and said, "I'll be right with you." He hung up, didn't allow her say more words. She wanted to phone him and stop him, but she inhaled a deep breath and pondered around her large self-contained that had lots of expensive decors around it. The thought of Dora's threats danced in her brain, forming all sorts of combinations. Her head was aching. She'd started chewing her artificial nails, defacing the green color to white. She'd met her ex-lovers' wives who'd come to fight her and warn her against their husbands in the market, shopping malls, and salons. But they were not half as stunning and huge as Dora. A knock suddenly came again at the door. Her heart trembled. She rushed to see who it was, and when she saw that it was Omaitem, she opened the door hastily, locking it as he stepped his foot in the room. "Your wife just left here," she said softly. Her heart was beating fast. Dora came here? Omaitem asked, looking amazed. Wyoma nodded. Did she do anything to you? He asked, holding her tight and looking into her eyes. Her face was pressed around his shoulders and she jerked back head, away from him, gasping. You have to get me another apartment as soon as possible. I can't stay here any longer, baby. Hold it. He held her upright with one arm, slipping off his jacket and dropping it over the bed. Now sit down and relax. I will do anything for you, Wyoma baby. His voice calmed her. He was the cutest of all the men she'd dated. He was different, bold, tall, huge, masculine, just her kind of man. He smiled, and she thought his smile won't change her feelings at that moment. His smile was usually slow and relaxed, the type of smile that made other people smile back. You're not still happy that I'm getting you a new house at the Sun City estate? It's secured there, honey, and Dora won't ever find you there. Omaitem said. Just go and warn her. Tell her never to bother or threaten me again. Wyoma said with a worrisome face. My love, Omaitem called her, trying to hold her hands. Warn your wife. Wyoma repeated. You know how difficult this can be, baby. You women won't get it. Dora has made me what I am today. She was there when I had nothing. We dated for 11 years and she stood by me. Going to warn her now is going to cause a lot of problems. Do you really love me? Wyoma asked meanly. Omaitem nodded. You can't compare the love I have for you with anyone else, Wyoma baby. I married Dora out of pity. If I hadn't married her, people would have said lots of things about me. She was of big help to my career. The heat became fierce as Omaitem held her hands tight and pushed her to himself, kissing her softly on the lips. I love you, Oma. Wyoma said calmly. He hugged her tight, and the scent of his expensive perfume clung to her dress. She'd wanted him from the first day she'd watched him sing on the church podium. She heard one of the church members murmur, this choir coordinator is a commissioner, he is so humble enough to serve Jesus. Wyoma wondered if the people who rendered services in the Lord's vineyard were only the less privileged. She watched him closely, and when she saw that he was quite a likable person, she approached him and told him of her intentions to join the choir too. His bodyguards wouldn't let her walk close to him, but Omaitem saw that the lady who wanted to have a conversation with him was too beautiful to be ignored. He gave them signal to let her see him. For a moment, she couldn't move after he was done talking. Omaitem was too handsome that she stood there staring at his face. Even when he drove away with his convoy, she was still frozen, and then she shook herself with a little nervous jerk of the shoulders. Honorable Omaitem Ude is a married man. Oh. Her 26-year-old younger sister Onwana said, after Wyoma told her of her meeting with Omaitem. Onwana was aware of her sister's intentions toward the commissioner. She'd been living with her in Abuja for 5 years before her late mom friend's death. She knew the things Wyoma could do to get a man of affluence like Omaitem. Omaitem was still on her bed, kissing her lips when she whispered something against his ears. He understood what she meant, so he stood up and pulled out his clothes, throwing them on her Persian rug. Wyoma was a woman who loved being laid. It was like food to her soul. And Omaitem had met his match the moment he'd collected her number that Sunday afternoon. 1 week after she'd joined the choir, he'd started making his intentions known by surprising her with gifts and money after each choir rehearsals. And a month after, she'd graced his bed like she owned his whole body and soul. And after that first night they'd made love at Sunderland Hotel, she'd told him of how uncomfortable she was to be meeting him in a hotel. She'd preferred they met at her house, where she thought was safer and more private. Omaitem loved the way she twisted her waist when he was inside of her. He'd compared her body to Dora's body countless times. My wife is too fat. My wife is too dull in bed. He'd said this to Wyoma a lot of times, and she was already aware of how safe she was with him. She had no competition. When she saw that she'd captured his heart, she began to make demands of all the things she wanted. She'd sold everything she owned after the death of her former man friend Chief Hezekiah. She'd sold her car, her bed, her plasma television, most of her shoes and designer handbags. Returning back home to UU meant starting life all over again. But Omaitem wouldn't wait to date her for so long before he'd ordered for all her electronics from Samsung company, including refrigerators and a big generator. He'd taken her to Dubai and bought her over 100 stiletto heel shoes and designers' dresses. Her room was flooded with over 300 designers' shoes of different colors. And Wayoma had felt so fulfilled to have a place in Omaitem's heart. She stared at him from his head to his feet, and every inch of him looked macho male. "I will buy you a house at Shelter Africa if you keep making me happy this way," he said as he laid her gently on the bed. "I will need a car first," she said in low whispers. A soft bite on her leg tickled her. He'd begun to kiss her feet, and then her thighs. "I will surprise you before Christmas," he said sensually as he pulled her panties off. She couldn't help sounding like a bird suddenly. She knew that Omaitem would keep to his words, and she was ready to abide by her usual rules on how to keep a rich sugar daddy. Omaitem was not the typical sugar daddy, or the usual one she'd always met. Omaitem declared gallantly that he was ready to be with Wayoma for life. She promised never to date or be with another man apart from him too, and he promised to be with her alone, and even his wife Dora wasn't going to stop them from being together. Omaitem made life easy for her. He'd rented a 2-bedroom flat at Sun City Estate in her name. "We do not have a lot of our church members living around here," he said, as he helped place the picture frames and artwork on the wall. His bodyguards had gotten used to working for Wayoma too. They'd helped in fixing the new couch Omaitem ordered from Treasure Island Furniture. "This place is beautiful," she exclaimed excitedly. "You deserve it, my love," Omaitem said as he hugged her tight to himself. The bodyguards and the security men had helped to install the air condition and other electrical appliances. Omaitem had sent his bodyguards home, while his driver slept in the Range Rover till the next morning. They had a drink that night. It was in celebration of the new house. She was going easy. She was laughing because she was happy, not because she was high or tipsy from the excessive intake of the red wine. She drained her glass defiantly and was about to pour in another into a glass when Omaitem held her to himself. "That's enough," he said softly. His phone suddenly rang, interrupting the romantic moment, and when he picked it and saw that it was his wife Dora calling, he ignored it and switched it off. "Who is that?" Wayoma asked. "The other woman," he whispered. Wayoma chuckled. "Doesn't she knows that she is married to a commissioner? You're currently in a meeting, baby, she should know that," Wayoma said, laughing out. "I will explain to her tomorrow. You should stop explaining yourself to Dora. She should know by now that you're a politician. Politicians are always busy, baby," she said gay. "Tomorrow is my daughter's visiting day. I'm sure she wanted to remind me. I haven't seen my daughter since she went back to boarding school," Omaitem said. "Dora can do that. You mustn't go with her, baby. Don't forget that tomorrow is the day you will meet with the governor for the ABAC project," she said, pulling out her blouse and revealing her cleavage in between a lemon-colored brassiere. Omaitem laughed. "So, you now have my schedule right in your hands, huh?" Wayoma nodded cheerfully. She'd begun to seduce him. She winked at him and pulled her miniskirt. Omaitem switched off the lights when he saw that his driver Udo parked the car close to the window. The next morning, after Omaitem had left for the meeting he had with the governor, Wayoma invited her sister Onwana over to see her new place. Onwana popped her mouth open when she entered the sitting room. "Oh my! This place is peacefully beautiful. It's bigger than the Abuja house, oh," Onwana said excitedly. "How can you even compare this small palace of mine to that small Abuja house that we squatted?" "This is big," Wayoma retorted. Onwana kept walking around and touching the soft couch, and then the walls. So, have you gotten a job? How come you packed out from the other house just after you renewed your rent? Not exactly. I met this man, he is God sent. God has used him to bless me. Wyoma said delightedly, holding her sister's hands. Onwana shook her hands off hers and moved backward, settling on the couch. You've gotten another sugar daddy, Wyoma. And you're not ashamed to call these God's blessings. Don't just start, Onwana. She yelled. I am your elder sister. How many years you take senior me? Just 2 years, Wyoma. I am still talking, she exclaimed. The house was quiet for a moment. See, I don't want to suffer at all. I am not good with business, and I don't want anyone ordering me around offices like I'm a small maid. I have been favored. God has given me a man who has come to change my life. Since Mama and Papa died, how many of our uncles or aunties have come to ask us how we are faring in? She inhaled a deep breath and then said, I will advise you leave that ghetto you're staying and come live here with me. This place is comfortable enough. It's a 2-bedroom apartment. God forbid. I can't live with you anymore. Not after one of your men friends almost raped me in Abuja. Not when I'm aware of where the source of your sinful money comes from. Wyoma laughed and clapped her hands, throwing it in the air. So, you prefer being a sales girl or a waiter at a fast food, Onwana? It's better than selling my body to a married man, oh. Onwana said casually. She meant it, but her sister felt she was stupid to have said such a thing. Wyoma followed him along the dark, stony path that led to her gate, her hand in his, her heart beating so hard that it was almost painful. Powerful feelings gripped her, excitement contradicting terror, her whole body quivering in anticipation. Omaitam said he had a surprise for her, and she couldn't guess what it was. If the surprise was even going to be the car he'd promised her, it wouldn't have been so soon. She'd known him for just 5 months, and it was going to be too soon. He only said he was going to buy her a car if she makes her happy. And Wyoma wasn't certain if she'd allowed him to touch her enough. Baby, I hope this is indeed a surprise. She asked as Omaitem kept strolling along the lonely estate. Where are your bodyguards? This is midnight, not safe. She added. Omaitem could only smile. She was breathless, but not entirely from the walk. After today, you will know how much I cherish you, Wyoma. Omaitem said. Wyoma giggled. She wasn't still convinced. She loved Omaitem, but trusting him enough to walk with him in the middle of the night was a problem to her. She'd heard stories of girls who were beheaded by their lovers in the past, and she didn't want to be a victim. She tried to be fierce. Shouldn't she have played safe and waited until she knew him better? She'd heard of the terrible things politicians had done to young girls, and she thought Omaitem might be that kind of a person. The myriad questions flew elusively around her head. She gave a soft sigh when she saw his bodyguards and a few cars parked at the entrance of the estate. With each step, she became fearless and bold enough to tighten her hands more in his. When they got close to where the car was parked, he gave her a sudden glance. You're so curious, my baby. I want to let you know that you're the love of my life, and I will do anything to make you happy. She felt her cheeks grow warm. I love you, she said, deciding absolute frankness was the only way to go. If I didn't make the mistake of marrying Dora, I would have married you by now. She looked down at his hands, and his gold wedding band blinked into her eyes. When he saw that she'd noticed that he was wearing his wedding band, he slipped it off his fingers and put it in his trousers. I was visiting our senior pastor today. I had to wear this band, he said. You don't have to explain. I am only a side chick, she said shrilly. Omaitam held her face with his 2 hands and said, I saw jealousy in your eyes when you saw the wedding band. I know you. She looked up and saw that he was watching her intently. She smiled faintly and took down her face. Why are we here? She asked. Omaitam knelt down with one knee and turned to one of the bodyguards who walked hastily toward him and handed a car key with some papers to him. I have come to show you how much I love you, Wayoma. I don't want to share you with any other man. I will do anything to keep you and make you happy, as far as you make me happy too. I got you a car. He pointed at a white Range Rover. That white Range is yours, baby. It's 2017 model Range Rover, specially made for women of good taste and class. Wayoma was speechless for moments when he placed the car keys in her hands and handed her the papers. She suddenly screamed excitedly and hugged him tight, kissing his lips. She ran to the car and touched its body, admiring it with sincere joy in her eyes. Omaitam was still kneeling, admiring her and the way she looked at the car. I love you, baby, she said aloud, jumping up and running toward him. He was silent, his stare pining her. Slowly he got to his feet and stood there, tall and commanding. Omaitam ordered the drivers and the bodyguards to leave, while he drove in the new Range Rover to the 5-star hotel in town. Where are we going? Wayoma asked. 5-star, I want to feel your body in an unusual place, he said. She smiled softly, as she stared at him and wondered if he was really a man or God himself. When they got to a suite, he held her to himself and said softly, You're very beautiful, please charm me more. He unfastened her bra. She'd heard the click, before she felt it go off her skin. Goosebumps formed on her skin as the chillness from the air condition enfolded her nakedness. It was so pleasant, as she felt so alive. Omaitam kissed her lips, her eyelids, holding her hair aside, turning her into his arms, kissing her shoulders and the nape of her neck. His hands moved along the curve of her hips and buttocks. He seemed to want to possess her entire body, to memorize each curve and hollow before they would lie down together. He was into her, and she. Her mind and her inner heart was thinking of the Range Rover he'd presented to her that night. It was the best moment of their relationship, and she cherished it. Dora drew a breath when the room door opened and she saw that it was Omaitam. It was 7:15 in the morning. She turned down the lamp then stood to face him. You slept out again, Oma, she said softly but rudely. Omaitam threw his suitcase on the bed and pulled out his shoes. I don't have what to say to you, Dora. You are still seeing that girl, right? She asked. She felt as if all her senses had suddenly sprung to life when she noticed lipstick stains and brown powder stains on his shirt. You're cheating on me again, Oma, she yelled. Even in my condition, she said softly now, her voice quivering. But Omaitam acted like she wasn't talking to him. He pulled out his shirt and then his belt, trying to remove his wristwatch. You abandoned your daughter and I have been driving myself to the hospital for months now. Even when the doctor demands to see you, you purposely refuse to come because you don't care about me or your daughter anymore. She sobbed. You're sick, Dora, but you had the power to go fight her on a Sunday afternoon at her house, huh? He asked meanly, flinging his wristwatch on the bed. Dora stared at him looking amazed. So she told you? You two met and she told you? You are comfortably cheating on me, she said in a shaky tone. Stop it, Dora. Just stop it. Yes, you're my wife. No one can take your place. But don't go out there to disgrace me, please. I have given you all you need. I have paid you back for all what you did for me in the past. We started life together when I had nothing, I understand. But please, don't inconvenience me. I am not inconveniencing you, Oma. If I am your wife, make me feel like one. I am sick of ovarian cancer. I need my loved ones around me now. Fuck you and your damn ovarian cancer. That name sounds like shit to me. Get ready, next month July, I will be sending you to America for surgery," he said, pulling out his boxers and walking hastily to the bathroom. Dora sat on the bed and wept softly. Her mind told her she was in her dying days. "Please God, save me, save my home." She shook her head in disbelief, desperately holding back tears. Omaitem had withdrawn from her. It was written in his closed expression. He couldn't even pretend about it. It was in his distant glance and in the setting of his eyes that he wasn't in love with her anymore. Dora had thought of reporting him to the senior pastor of their church, but she didn't agree to the decision. The last time she did report her husband for always keeping out late, Pastor Godfrey had told her to be submissive and pray for him to change. "He is a commissioner, madam. He is a choir coordinator. You don't expect to see him at home all the time. Pray for him to change. Watch Christian movies and see how women handle their homes," he said boldly. Dora became confused. She was ashamed to go tell her father of the things she was going through. Her father never wanted his only daughter to be married to Omaitem. He thought Omaitem to be poor, proud and unkind. But since Dora had insisted she loved him and would go ahead to marry him, her father hadn't protested anymore. When Jela arrived 8 years ago, it was also the year Omaitem began to get appointments from the state government. Omaitem came out of the bathroom, with scanty waters and white towel tied around his waist. He used the body spray and drew in a breath when he saw that Dora's face was sad and teary. He stared at her in stupefied confusion for an eternity. "Dora, I have loved you for 8 years. We've had a beautiful daughter from our union. You should be grateful to God for this," he said proudly. Dora was stunned. She turned and gave him a stern stare. There was everything wrong with Omaitem's words. She felt he was going crazy to say such words to her. "It is supposed to be forever. It's for better for worse, Omaitem. You and I forever. No other woman. No side chicks, no asanda allowed. And you're saying just 8 years? It is supposed to be forever. Till death do us part. Tell that on your Bible and your fucked up religion. I can decide to marry as many wives as I want. Do you know who you're? Have you forgotten who you are, Omaitem? Do you like scrambled or boiled eggs?" "Scrambled, please," he replied. He watched her walk to the gas, staring at it for minutes. She was wearing a green-colored nightwear. The sleeves were rolled up and he couldn't take his eyes off those smooth, long legs she displayed. His love was so strong at that instant it was like fire running before a relentless wind, utterly out of control, unstoppable. He walked to her, hugged his arms around her waist and Yuri God's caressed her. "You're a choir coordinator. You're my husband. No other woman will take my place in Jesus' name." Dora yelled thunderously until she'd began to feel sharp pains below her abdomen. She held her abdomen and fell on the bed. She knew that blood was draining from her body, and that if she said any more word, she might pass out without delay. Omaitem's face tightened. He rushed at her and carried her into his arms. She was weighty, he couldn't breathe when he held her. He yelled at his bodyguards and they all rushed into the room. They were all flabbergasted when they saw that Dora was in deep pains. "Sorry, madam," they said in unison as they carried her out to the car, while Omaitem rushed to the wardrobe to get dressed up. There was silence in the air, like it was a graveyard itself. Only the sounds of freezing air from the air conditioner was heard for a while. Omaitem folded her arms across her chest tightly and compressed his lips. He was staring at Dora, whose eyes were wide open, but she couldn't say a word. The pains were unbearable, and she didn't want to drag it any further. The doctor said she needed to be on admission for a few more days, before she could be posted to America for surgery. Tomorrow, Jela will be closing from school. Pick her up by 10 in the morning, and before you take her to my elder brother's place at Oka Etinen, bring her here," she said in a horrified whisper. Omaitem nodded calmly before he said, "Okay." It was all Dora said before turning her attention quietly to the wall. Her heart was heavy. It seemed that 100 questions lay buried below the surface of the silence, like lava in a volcano, ready to erupt. It was on the tip of Ametem's tongue to tell her the things she wanted to hear. To tell her that he was sorry for the bitter words he'd said to her. He glanced over her. He was still sitting there by her bed in the hospital. And she was lying there stiff and sad, utterly without her usual exuberance. His phone had been ringing for 2 days now, and he selected the calls he would answer, which were mainly the calls of the governor and a few of his personal assistants. Wayoma had sent him several text messages. He only replied with a love emoji that blew love shapes in form of kisses. He was sure Wayoma was going to forgive her. But Dora wouldn't if he ever picked another woman's call while she was right there sick and frustrated. He'd wanted to call his father-in-law, Dora's father, and tell him of his only daughter's predicament. But he was going to yell at him, abuse him, and render insults at him before thinking of a solution. He'd never liked him from the beginning. He'd only allowed him to marry his daughter because it was what she wanted. Dora was the child of his old age. She didn't even suck her mother's breast milk for a month when she died of cardiac arrest. Her father wept bitterly after the death of his wife. He talked about his beloved wife Ruth all the time, and mourned her. As a retired captain in the Nigerian Armed Forces, he had connections with the government officials and former governors. After Omaitem had married his daughter, he linked him up with a governor whom he worked with for a while, until he was made a commissioner. He'd done this for his only daughter. He'd established Dora's 2 brothers and sent the first Yuko to a Navy school, and the second Yukim to Army school, and whenever he sat at home on a family reunion Sunday, he would be proud his children were successful in their careers, except Dora, who only made her money from her husband. He'd pleaded with her not to marry Omaitem, that he would buy her a car. She agreed, but after he bought her a car, she sold it and gave the money to her husband Omaitem. Omaitem was tired of sitting by Dora's hospital bed. He felt he had done more than he should do. He had an irresistible urge to see Wayoma. "I have meetings to attend. I will call my sister Anne to come take care of you," he said as he stood to leave. Dora had expected him to place a kiss on his cheeks, but he didn't. The driver took him to Wayoma's house that evening, and when he alighted from the jeep, he walked hastily to her door and rang the doorbell. When she peeped through the window and saw that he was the one, she sighed and opened the door, walking away. "I am sorry, Dora has been ill," he said weakly. "Is that why you refused my calls? Tell me the truth, you were with another girl," she said bitterly. "No, baby," he protested and knelt down. "Baby, please, I am telling you the truth, Dora has been ill since 2 days ago." He rubbed a hand over his face and kept staring at her. "I told you no woman can take your place, baby. It's you alone. I promised to spend my whole week with you at Australia on Tuesday." "What's happening in Australia?" she asked meanly. "The governor wants me to travel with him. It's an official trip that concerns my duties as the Commissioner for Finance. I will call my elder sister Anne to go stay with Dora at the hospital," he said. Wayoma smiled. Her lips were dry and she looked at his mouth and longed to feel it against her own lips. It was just 2 days he'd not made love to her, and they both felt like it was forever. She'd wanted him to crush the breath out of her. The realization of how much she wanted him was known when she began to pull her panty out, right before him. Nothing in his life had prepared him for needing a woman so badly that he was aching for her. He developed a raging emotion and feelings for her that moment as he saw the color of her thighs. "Come here," she called out sensually, tapping at him with her first finger and falling gently on the couch. He pulled out her brassiere and nibbled softly on her nipples, then she moaned so loud that the driver could hear her. It was as if they were crazy in their own world of fantasy. He'd spent his whole day, cuddling her, eating Pringles and sipping white wine, while he gave her a long-lasting folotio that made him say things he didn't even understand. The next morning, Wayoma's first thought was Australia. As she lay there on Ametam's chest, Warm and drowsy, she was permeated with longing and excitement as she was just imagining how her trip was going to be. Her life had been changed. After Chief Hezekiah, she'd always thought no man was going to care so much about her the way he did. But she was wrong. Omaitem came into her life and loved her unconditionally. She was finding him so different. Sexually he was overwhelmingly attractive and she fancied him so much. Omaitem had loved her with his whole being, body and soul. She'd been staring at his face and wishing he was never married to anyone else. A tiny dart of hope pricked her when she knew that he'd never said something nice about Dora. He was gentle, kind and loving. He was so special to her. A joy filled her to bursting, yet there was something that kept reminding her that he wasn't all his, that he was a married man with a daughter. It was as if it was trying to hold back almost all what she had planned, as if issuing a kind of warning. But maybe it was only the other side of her heart, telling her lies she never believed. Omaitem woke up hungry. He yawned at first, and then took her head gently off his chest. It was 11:15 and he'd forgotten about picking up Jayla, his daughter, from school. "Good morning, baby," he said calmly. Waioma nodded and replied, "Good morning, my heart desire." She'd gotten up from the bed and walked to her kitchen. She stared at the full stock store, filled with provisions and foodstuffs, but she couldn't just know what to do with them. Her sister had taught her how to boil rice, but the sauce for rice was what she found quite difficult to make. She sat on a high kitchen stool by the store, staring at the crate of eggs and yams, and a bag of rice. Omaitem took a stroll into the kitchen and kissed her on the forehead. "What are you making for breakfast, baby?" he asked. Eggs, she stammered. Smiled. "You don't know how to cook, it's okay, we can call a fast food to get us breakfast. Or, we can just eat out," he said, running his hands on her hair. She became shy. He was aware that she wasn't just the cooking person. He knew from the moment he watched her stare at the cooking gas for minutes. "We should employ someone who can cook for you here," he said. "Not female," she said. "And not male either," he retorted. "Okay. An older woman. Someone that can help clean the house too. But she won't live here. The person will resume work by 9 in the morning and close by 6 in the evening, just after dinner," she said shrilly. Omaitem kissed her on the cheeks. "Whatever you want, baby." He continued to study her face. Few moments later, they'd both dressed up and ready to go eat at a restaurant. Omaitem ordered the driver to go home and freshen up, while he gets himself something to eat. Waioma drove her new Range Rover out of estate, and everyone stared at her looking bewildered. "This car fits you, baby. I knew it will fit you so much, that's why I got it for you," Omaitem said as he fixed his seatbelt. Waioma smiled. "You've got good taste, baby," she said delightedly as she approached the estate exit. The security man at the gate hailed her when she drove past. "That girl too fine abeg, oh. See machine wey man by give am," one of the security men said. "No jazz she dey use, no be clear eye that man take by that car." "E no fit happen," the other security man retorted. Contentment filled Waioma as she gulped down the last glass of juice. Omaitem had finished eating long before her. "Geez," he exclaimed. "What?" Waioma asked. Omaitem checked his time and when he saw that it was almost 2 p.m. he got up immediately from the chair. "I have to pick my daughter from school," he said hastily, bringing out his ATM card from the wallet and calling on the waiter. After he made payments, he turned to Waioma. "Let's go pick Jayla." "What? That won't be safe," she said. "Don't let that bother you. Come with me," he said and held her hands, dragging her after him. They both arrived at Jayla's school in the evening. Jayla was already weak, hungry, and tired. She was sitting under a tree. She'd started wondering why it took so long for her mother to come carry her, Dora never took so much time. As she saw her father alight from the Range Rover, she got up and ran toward him, hugging him tight. "Welcome, Daddy. See my report card, I took first again," she said, handing a piece of paper to her father excitedly. Her eyes widened when she turned and realized that the woman on the steering wasn't her mother. "Where is my mommy?" she asked. And there was something in Jayla's demeanor that evening. Wyoma felt another small twinge of guilt but suppressed it. She wasn't comfortable. Omaitem had wanted to introduce Wyoma as his friend, but he knew that he was going to complicate more issues. Jayla would have asked questions. He picked his phone and called one of his personal assistants to go pick his sister Anne, so that she could stay with Dora at the hospital, while he ran around for meetings with the governor and then take Jayla to her uncle's place at AK Etinen, before finding peace in the arms of his lover at the end of the day. "Dad, where is my mommy, and who is this woman?" Jayla asked rudely. Omaitem stammered before he replied, Baby, I am taking you to mommy right now." "And the woman driving us?" she asked girlishly. "Your daddy's friend." Wyoma replied gently as she controlled the steering on a pothole. "My mommy is my daddy's only friend," Jayla yelled. "Yes, my angel," Omaitem retorted calmly. Wyoma finally sank into her chair, visibly shaken as she drove quietly. As soon as they got to Uyo, Omaitem gave her directions to the hospital, and as soon as she drove into the hospital parking space, and Omaitem and Jayla alighted, she drove off without waiting to hear what Omaitem had to say. Jayla wondered what she was doing at the hospital. Her father led her to Dora's ward, and when she clicked the door open, she was near tears when she saw that oxygen tube connected to her mother's nostrils. There was a doctor standing by the bed. "Your wife has been wanting to see you, Honorable," he said. "But I left here just yesterday," he retorted rudely. "Sir, you need to be around her now," he said boldly and walked out. Jayla walked close to her mom and hugged her tight. "My mommy," she said softly, her little voice became teary. She removed her report card and showed to her mom. "I took first again, mommy." Dora removed the oxygen tube from her nose and turned directly at her daughter. "My little angel," she said, running her hands on Jayla's long wavy hair. "Thank you for always making me proud." "Mommy will be fine, my love," she said weakly. "You will go to Uncle Yukim's house and stay there until I get well. He will be bringing you here to see me," she added, trying to get some air. Jayla nodded sadly and carefully placed the oxygen tube on her mother's nostrils. She did it wrongly, but Dora helped fix the tube perfectly. Jayla wept bitterly. It took Omaitem several minutes to calm her down. He kept looking at the way she hugged her mother Dora. Then, his sister Anne clicked the door open. "Auntie Anne," Jayla called out as she ran and hugged Anne. "My favorite niece," and grabbed Jayla to herself and hugged her warmly. Anne was lanky and bold. She was a widow with a son. Her husband died in an accident few months after her wedding, just before she realized she was pregnant. She'd been Omaitem's favorite sibling from childhood, and he adored her so much. "My wife," she called Dora weakly as she saw her. Her eyes widened. She turned to Omaitem. "What happened, Oma?" "I was about cooking when your PA came in and said Dora had been admitted," she said with a worried face. And could see her brother's eyes darting from face to face, belligerent, uncertain, afraid and weak. "I can't say this before Jayla. The doctor will explain to you," he said. "How long will I have to be with her? You know I will have to go take stocks of my goods at the supermarket during the week," she said. "You won't stay for that long." He paused and then continued, "I will be going to Australia with the governor on Tuesday or Monday." "You will leave your sick wife for Australia?" Anne asked, looking amazed. Dora's eyes popped open. She could hear all the conversations her husband and her sister-in-law were having. Her daughter Jayla only sat by a corner, staring at her auntie and her father argue. Oma, please stay, Dora's voice came in weakly. Item stared at Dora for moments, and walked close to her bed. I will be back before you know it. He placed a kiss on her forehead. Dora could perceive a flowery female cologne on his body. But she held back tears and placed back the tube on her nose. Item held Jayla's hands. She knew he wanted to take her away. She resisted and began to sob. I don't want to leave my mommy. Let her be here with us. I will call you Kim to come pick her tomorrow after church service. And said. Item gave a loud sigh. I will send my PA to bring you money for feeding and toiletries. He said, and walked out. Episode 8. He ordered his PA to take him to Sun City Estate first. His mind told him why Oma wasn't happy when she left. When he got to her house, his heart trembled when he saw her sitting in the car and sipping brandy from a bottle. Baby, are you okay? He asked, looking bewildered. Do I look okay? Your little girl insulted me right before your eyes, and you didn't say a word. She said bitterly. He glared at her for a long moment. Before she could say another word, he'd silenced her with a deep kiss. A deeper connectedness linked them as well. They both felt that too. He'd read it in her eyes that she loved him so much that he could tell. Item had missed church service and choir rehearsals for the first time. He'd taken permission from his branch pastor. My wife is ill, and I'm busy with political meetings. Please, my assistant can handle the duties, he said in a text message he sent to the pastor. He'd spent his entire Sunday with Wyoma, drinking tea and eating pancakes he'd ordered from the Lou Meridian restaurant. After the Sunday service, a few pastors of the church had gone to see Dora at the hospital. They prayed for her. After they were gone, her brother Yukim the soldier had come to carry Jayla. Disbelief and hurt were painted in Dora's eyes when she realized her husband had not called or visited. The hurt of finding herself betrayed by her own husband made her sob softly. She remembered how he smelled the previous night, the scent of a woman. My wife, why are you sad? And asked surprisingly as she stood to cover her body with the blanket. Dora stared at her sister-in-law as if her question made no sense. She wasn't sure she was going to respond to Anne. Anne took a Bible and knelt before her. You will be well, you are a good woman, God doesn't let good women die. Anne said, holding Dora's hands. Dora remained silent and didn't attempt to force a conversation. Her stormy eyes still reflected anger and hurt. You remember when my brother first brought you home? How much we liked ourselves at first sight. I just knew at that moment that Oma had brought me the sister I never had. And ever since you came into our lives, things changed. You invested so much in me, gave me money to start up my supermarket business when David died and left Bobby and I. You are that true friend and sister. Anne said, smiling as tears dropped out from her eyes. Then she lifted her eyes and saw that Dora had fallen asleep. But she still went on, and now you are here, sick. I hate to see you this way, sister, you don't deserve to be here. She said tearily and then sobbed. She mopped Dora's body with warm water and a mild soap. Then she held her hands and whispered words of prayers that night. The next day, Item and Wyoma had packed their boxes and joined the governor's convoy. They'd arrived Sydney with a few other government officials at the late hours of Tuesday, and Item had forgotten to send money to Dora, or even inform her of his movements. After 3 days of long hours of crucial meetings with the governor and the Australian businessmen, he'd finally had time for Wyoma, who was already tired of being lonely. He'd taken her to Crown Towers Hotel at Melbourne to spend the weekend. He'd also taken her to harbours, museums, gardens, shopping malls and cathedrals where she took several pictures. After a week of a short official meeting and vacation in Australia, they'd flown back to Nigeria with an unforgettable memory. As soon as he got to Nigeria, his personal assistant had come to tell him of Dora's ill health. She gets worse by the day, sir. The doctor said she wants to see you, She has been crying to see you. Samson said boldly. She is not a child. I will make preparations for her to be taken to America as soon as possible. Omaitem said rudely. She wants to see you, sir. Samson insisted. Get out of here and take my luggage home. Did I say I didn't hear you? Samson hurriedly took his luggage to the car, while Wyoma followed him behind. Omaitem took Wyoma to his house that evening to drop his luggage before joining her at her place. I hope it is safe, she asked. Nobody is home. Just the securities, he said. As they got to Omaitem's big edifice, they all alighted from the car. Omaitem held her hands and led her to his large sitting room, where photo frames of his daughter and Dora were hung almost everywhere on the walls. She walked gently and touched the picture framed of Omaitem with the governor and the president, then she gasped. Omaitem held her from behind and began to kiss her neck, and before she could turn to respond to his moves, a loud voice startled them. Is this the reason why you've not come to see your sick wife who has been crying bitterly to see her husband? The doctors tried reaching you few days ago and your lines were not available. And said with deep anger in her tone. I was in Australia, I just returned. You were in Australia with this bitch. You left your sick wife penniless, without care. You wicked Omaitem. Sister, please, don't shut up. Just shut up. She yelled. You wicked. Just look at you. Because you've started seeing government money, you're now allowing yourself to be manipulated by cheap sluts. And Omaitem yelled, walking close to her with anger in his eyes. Don't you dare talk to my woman like that ever again. And nodded more violently this time. I can see she has used you juju and charms on you. She turned to Wyoma and said softly, well done, ho. Omaitem lifted his hands firmly, but Anne held his hands firmer and stared at his eyes with fire burning in them. It's like you've forgotten who your sister is. Dare you try me, and I will show you that being a woman doesn't make me powerless. I will beat you and your cheap whore will appear on the pages of newspapers tomorrow. He savored the openly hostile glare she shot at him. Before she could drop his hands down, Wyoma had pulled out her shoes and ran out of the house. And left her brother's house with a battered heart at the early hours of a new month of July. She was furious. She left with a few of Dora's nightwears, panties and pads. It was what took her to Omaitem's house at first. She had not seen her son Bobby since she'd left to stay with Dora. She'd missed him so much, and thought of calling him to visit her at the hospital the next day. The rain fell softly that evening, as she hurried into the hospital reception. Her body had drained with rainwater, and she was really pressed. She rushed into the hospital guest toilet to ease herself before she took a lift to Dora's ward. As she took down her panty to sit comfortably on the cistern, the imagery of what she saw at her brother's house disorganized her. My woman rang a bell in her ears. She'd wondered why her younger brother would have the guts to refer to that lady she saw at his house as his woman. As she stood to flush the cistern, her phone fell into it. She stood mutely and shocked. She didn't know what to do, whether to dip her hands into the cistern that sick people defecated and peed inside daily. She gave a loud sigh and walked away. As she got into the elevator, she promised herself never to mention what she saw at Omaitem's house to Dora or anyone, not even to her elder brother Akpakpan, who wouldn't have hesitated to call for a family meeting immediately. She might leave scars to last a lifetime in Dora's heart, if she ever broke such a news to her on a sick bay. As the elevator opened, she hit her left leg hard. What is happening to me today? She asked angrily as she leaped to Dora's ward. As she opened the ward, she became bewildered at the sight of Dora's brothers and the doctor. I want to see my husband, Dora cried out softly. Her eyes and her face were whitened and covered with tears and catarrh. She looked weak and really sick. Forget about him, your brothers are here, see, pointing at me. Your sister-in-law Anne is here. I would have brought Jailer, but you instructed us not to. Her brother Yukim said boldly and fiercely. He was dressed in a navy uniform. Oma. Dora paused. She began to have this sudden struggle to breathe. Her eyes were white, couldn't see her eyeballs anymore. Yukim screamed, while Yuko held her hands firmly shouting, Dorabong. Dorobosi. The doctor pressed the bell by the bedside and alerted the nurses and other doctors. They ran into the ward in groups, each of them with a stethoscope hung around their necks. One of the doctors pressed the stethoscope on Dora's chest. Everywhere became calm as Anne's heart kept beating and vibrating. Dora had stopped the struggle to live. She'd passed out with her eyes wide open. The doctor turned to everyone in the room and shook his head. Yuko yelled a bold scream and held the doctor's collar. What? What? Tell me what? He asked, shaking thunderously. Yukim had lowered himself on the floor, spread his legs and began to sob softly. A feminine scream came in. It was Anne. The nurses tried to straighten Dora's body. They'd first closed her teary eyes, and even after they'd closed her eyes, tears were running out more. For a stunned instant, unable to accept the nightmare, Anne screamed aloud. Sister! Who will take care of your daughter Anne? Who will I run to when I'm broke? Wake up and tell me you're fine. Tell me this is a prank, please. And lamented bitterly. Yukim remained motionless, speechless. He stood to watch his sister's body being covered with white sheets, and the syringe disconnected from her hands. The moment shocked him to grim reality. With a strength fueled by terror and fury, Yuko walked out of the ward, anger written all over his face. The doctors and the nurses ran after him and held him firmly. Be strong like a man, Captain Yuko. One of the doctors said, patting him softly on the chest. The other nurses rushed back to the ward to take Dora's body away. Anne stood tearily and said, please, let me see her face for the last time. She cried out. One of the nurses unveiled Dora's face, and Anne held it with her two hands. You will forever remain in my heart, sister, she said tearily. Before she could mutter any other word, they'd covered her back and pushed her body away. Dora and Yukim cried till there were no tears in their eyes. They cried till they became weak and dumbfounded. Ametam's phone rang severally when the doctor called to break the news of his wife's demise. He kept staring at it ringing, while he rode softly on Wyoma. She'd flung the phone on the other side of the couch, holding him tight and moaning aloud softly. And after he was done making love to her, he rushed over to his phone. Who called you? Wyoma asked. The doctor. They should let you rest. Shebi, your sister is with Dora. Wyoma asked with a worried face. Omaitam nodded. I certainly know what he wants to say. That Dora wants to see me and blah blah blah. You should see her tomorrow. That is the only woman I can share you with, your wife. Wyoma retorted. The phone rang again, and Omaitam didn't wait for it to ring for long when he picked the call and shouted, every mature human calls twice, Dr. Harrison, this isn't right. I mean, you're bothering me, he said with anger in his tone. I am sorry to disturb, sir. The hospital wants to pass the news that Dora just died an hour ago, Dr. Harrison said and hung the call. Omaitam stood like a statue for seconds. He couldn't say a word. Shivers of cold suddenly ran into his body, as the rains kept falling like the sky was weeping for Dora's death too. Dora's father, Captain Etukudo, stood still when his son broke the news of his daughter's demise. His stomach contracted, his heart trembled, he couldn't believe it. Yukim and Yuko had comported themselves, ready to tell their father and face the consequences of his reactions. He shook his head vehemently as tears dropped bit by bit from his eyes. His legs felt like a wooden block, but he got them moving toward his sons, still dressed in his blue and white striped pajamas. Take me to where she is, I want to be sure she is the one, Captain Etukudo said with a trembling voice as Yukim and Yuko held his hands and drove him to the hospital mortuary, where Dora's body was admitted. Yuko had given their father a brief narration of how their sister died. She kept calling her husband. He hadn't seen her till she died. Yuko went on with a low voice that throbbed with feelings. His father didn't say a word. His mind had gone far. He'd imagined the picture of his daughter Dora, from the day her mother had her, how he held her excitedly at the hospital and all the sweet journey of life he'd experienced with Dora. When Yukim drove into the hospital, they'd seen lots of government official cars parked at the garage. They knew that Omaitem was there. Their hearts became heavy when they alighted from the car. Their father's feet faltered as they held him toward the mortuary. They'd seen security men in uniforms around the hospital premises with guns. A few of them who knew Captain Etukudo saluted him as his sons held him and walked past. Ametam's heart fell when he saw Yuko, Yukim and his father-in-law. He was waiting to see Dora's body at the front of the mortuary. A few security men surrounded him with guns. Yukim suddenly left his father's arms and rushed at Omaitem, punching him hard on the face. The security officials held Yukim, pushing him off and trying to protect Omaitem. A few of them pointed their guns at Yukim. "I am bigger than your guns. I am a captain in the Nigerian army, and he is a mere commissioner, made by my very own family. We are all soldiers, so drop your guns and face this fight. Omaitem, you killed my sister, you ungrateful beast. We shall pay you back. You've matched the tails of sleeping lions," he said aloud bitterly. "Let me see her," Captain Etukudo said weakly. He'd been longing to see the body of his daughter, and to touch her stiff hands for the last time. "I know nothing of your sister's death. She was my wife," Omaitem said powerfully. Jeers and hoots of derision assailed Yuko's ears. He'd felt Omaitem was just a joker who had taken them for granted. He should have looked ridiculous, like someone who just lost his wife, but even at that very moment, he still looked like a man who wasn't moved by the death of 10,000s of Dora. Everywhere became quiet as Dora's body was rolled out with a stretcher. She'd laid like she was asleep. Her father rushed at her and held her family, crying aloud like a child. He sobered quickly, the grinning face becoming anxious. They all stood and watched her body being taken back into the mortuary. Captain Etukudo instructed the mortuary attendant not to deliver his daughter's body to anyone except his sons or him. "She will be buried in my compound," Captain Etukudo yelled. "But she is my wife, rightfully, she is supposed to be buried in my family house. Over our dead bodies will we allow such nonsense? Our sister's body is ours. We will not let anyone take her away from us. You've killed her Omaitem, her remains will come home," Yuko said. Everything about Yuko was dangerous. Not just his huge size as his siblings and father, but his voice and the sheer power of his presence. As he spoke and looked at them, Omaitem's security men seemed to shrink. "Even your government won't fight for you, Omaitem. Do not dare come near my sister's body," Yukim added gently as the two men held their old father's arms and walked away. Jela had not heard of her mother's death. Yukim had told her different lies and given her false reasons on why they can't visit Dora at the hospital. "Uncle Yuke, I had a dream how mommy waved me goodbye. I ran after her but she ran faster. At a point I couldn't view her anymore," she said innocently at the dining table, as they were about to have breakfast. Yukim's cutleries fell off his hands, as he began to sob softly. "Uncle, why are you crying?" Jela asked. "Your mommy has gone to heaven, baby. She left a day before yesterday," he said with a broken voice, still in tears. Jela knew what it meant to go to heaven. She knew that he meant her mother of 8 years was dead, and no more in existence. The world shimmered before Jela's eyes as she kept staring at her uncle's face. She couldn't cry, her eyes were filled with misery, sadness and questions. Yukim cupped her cheek with his hand and held it firmly, staring at it and reading her eyes. She looked so much like Dora, and he was happy that the memory of his sister still lived on. "When mommy is buried,"